Today, I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Tenille Bentley, a multi-award winning leader in sound therapy, emotional literacy, and holistic well-being. She is also the founder and creative director of the internationally acclaimed Encoda Orchestra. Tenille has pioneered a fusion of classical music and ancient sound healing traditions, the part that I'm most interested in. And she's also just happened to earn 15 global awards and recognition from audiences and media worldwide. Not only that, her groundbreaking work doesn't just inspire, it's backed by science. She's also collaborated with neuroscientists from Murdoch University here in Western Australia. And she has also researched the psychological impacts of sound healing, bridging the gap between art and science, which is fantastic. She also happens to be a co-creator and executive producer of the award-winning docu-series Does Sound Heal? And she dives into the intersection of sound science and the human body. I was at her very first launch. We're going to get straight into this amazing conversation. Tenille, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, quite a few accolades and experiences that you've had on your journey so far. Would you consider yourself a bit of an entrepreneur? You've certainly dabbled in a lot and wear many hats.
Yeah, I'm definitely an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since the age of about 8. So I
Wow.
love business. I love building businesses. I've been building businesses for 25 plus years. It gives me meaning and purpose and a sense of freedom, which is one of my highest values. So, I feel that that's a part of it, and a lot of hard work and sleepless nights.
Yes, as a business owner myself, it kind of the passion doesn't really end, does it, when the project does, and the mind keeps ticking over. As you know, our audience are healers and also people that are really wanting to dive into their intuition. And I was really curious because I know that you've launched a new program where you're going to be educating and creating the next, I guess, level of sound therapists, which I think is you're really bridging, new work out there. My daughter actually plays the flute, so she's got that traditional background in music, which I know takes years and years to be able to practice and learn how to play an instrument. I'm really curious as to your beginnings, Tenille. How did you first fall in love with music?
I think it was just a byproduct of the life that I was born into. I mean, while I was still in the womb, that my mum played music on her tummy, and my dad is a musician, very well known musician in South Africa. He was number one on the charts and travelled around being, I suppose, very well known in the industry of music. He was a singer, lead singer, and both of them. I mean, my father was a musician, my mother an artist, but also my business as well. So there was sort of that great combination of the left and right brain. But yeah, if I fast forwarded to, I think, growing up, I grew up in quite a traumatic household of domestic violence and emotional and physical abuse. And as a result of that, and a lot of people do, I probably stepped into the archetype of the wounded artist for a little while as my way of being able to express, but it was usually through animals and music. So we lived on a hobby farm, and I would always go and talk to all the animals because, they back. So I would sit with them, and they were my escape. And music became the same as well, but I was very shy. And my sister was an incredible singer. She had a beautiful voice. And so she was sort of being groomed to be the musician in the family. And I was just a little bit, I don't know, I didn't really feel that I could express. And maybe there was a subconscious element of this silencing of the inner voice because of the environment that I grew up in. But when I became a teenager, I had a lot of insecurities, as most teens do, but, pile on the latent traumas that exist there, and then the behaviors come out in certain ways. And for me, that came out in being very, 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 very shy. I didn't like myself at all. I would cover my body from head to toe so nobody could see my skin. I was like, it was actually quite a,
Right.
and I was as a teenager because I blamed myself for everything that happened.
What's going on?
Um, and I also on top of that, got bullied at school as well. So it was kind of like, you had it at home, had it at school. It was everywhere. And I didn't have the
Finding
tools to know.
to escape the world.
Yeah, didn't have the tools to know how to cope. And so I got to a point where I think it was more in my later teens that I just got sick of being that person. And I was just like, I'm just sick of being like this. Everyone else is confident. Like, why can't I be more confident? So I thought to myself, in my true Taurian fashion, I decided to go to the absolute extreme. And I ended up saying to myself, how can I boost my confidence? And I thought, I'll just start singing in a band. Of course.
Wow.
And so I just threw myself from this very shy, very introvert,
Introverted.
very self-loathing, kind of person with all those things. And then I found music and started to sing. And, even my parents and my family didn't even know I could sing the way I could sing. And I started off in bands, and then that opened me up. I mean, I was almost throwing up the first time I went out to perform. And and then fast forwarding, I mean, that was a very different type of music. And then I really went for it. Like, I wrote albums, I wrote my own music, producing, doing all this kind of stuff. And it was in a totally different genre. And it was so interesting looking back. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, but looking back, I kind of thought, why is this not working? Why am I not getting my record contract?
What genre were you singing?
It was pop, funk, and R&B, and so a combination of all of those. So a bit of soul, a bit of R&B. So I kind of always loved the Aretha Franklin, lane.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had a very big voice for a very little girl. And often that's what the record companies would say to me. I remember meeting with Mushroom Records once, and they're like, "You don't match your voice." And it's very different to how I sing now. I sing very soft and gentle, but that's reflective of where my soul is at. But back then it was just like expression. I think it was this build up of just not being able to express. So I became a really big singer. And they couldn't put it together. They were like, "It doesn't match you. I don't know how to market you with a voice like that." And I'm like, "What do you mean? That's a great marketing." So
Yeah, it's
so
unique,
anyway.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just kind of went from there, and I did that until 23. And then at 23, I said to myself, if I haven't got my record contract, which I almost got with Sony, I stopping music, and I'm not going to sing again. I'm not going to do anything with music again. I'm going to go into business. And that's when I went into running companies and building companies and charities and all sorts of things. And for 15 years, I did not sing. I didn't do anything at all with my music. I just stopped and shifted my focus because that was the end of that chapter. But
Yeah.
music
Right.
has a very interesting way of finding us again.
Dovetailed its way back into your life.
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing. It's funny, isn't it? The fuel that comes from, our traumas, I think, in life. I was listening to some of your sounds last night, and they're so soothing. There's such a ethereal quality to your voice. And I've had the privilege of having you come in to play in my Intuitive Reiki membership group, and just the ancient instruments that you use. It is just a unique fusion, I think, that speaks to the soul. And I really do feel that there's a level of awakening that comes from sound and frequency. And I know from Reiki, we look at, vibration, frequency, sound. What have you discovered from the science as you've started to experiment with recording devices? And I know from Reiki, the science doesn't match the experience. So we know that even though we can't see energy healing, and I know you've attended some of my Reiki trainings as well, we can't see it, but I don't think we have the tools to effectively measure what the energy is not only doing to our bodies, but what it's also doing to the whole person on a, mind, body, and spirit level. So we anecdotally have the evidence. We know the shifts that happen with people. We see it. And I had a scientist actually come. She was studying metaphysical energy at university. So there is a shift that's happened over the last few years where they're suddenly realizing, oh, there's something here. And I mean, our healing goes, it is ancient. It's been around for a long time. And so she said they need to be able to shift the way that science is measuring in order to accurately have the data to support that it works. Have you come across any tools that they're using to create that, that change in how they measure energy and frequency and sound?
Yeah, so when we first began, we worked with the Perth Brain Centre, and we were measuring through QEEG and neurofeedback, biofeedback markers to identify the physiological and biological effects of this. Now, it is very, this is the whole purpose of the film Does Sound Heal, was like, I want to take a journey on
Mm,
trying to quantify the unquantifiable. I mean, there's a
mm.
pocket of history that we don't know, and I don't know if we will ever really arrive at knowing until we evolve our consciousness completely as a society. But I think that for now, when I look at science is really, the purpose of science is it's rediscovering truth. So it's discovering truth as it goes, and then it's just like, okay, well, this is true now. Okay, well, now this is true now. And it is dependent on the tools that they have. Right now, the tools that we have for a project we're looking at with measuring and quantifying the 432 hertz frequency with the orchestra is cortisol levels, because often that's a really good measuring tool. So we do a saliva sample, and we get the cortisol levels before, mid, and after, or I think before and after the experience. Obviously, if there has been a reduction in cortisol levels, we can say that that's a definite measurable target of
Physiological
how,
change.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a response, because we know when there's a reduction in cortisol in the body, we have an upregulation of the immune system and a reduction of the stress
Yeah.
hormone. So, or cortisol is responsible for that stress hormone. So, yeah, so there are tools, but I do agree that we are still evolving. And there are,
Mm.
even if Heart Math Institute, when they measure the electromagnetic field of a human being, it goes for 6 to 8 feet, and they said they can only, and we emit that far. They can measure it, that we're
Mm.
emitting that,
Uh,
but that's as far as their
yeah.
tools go. They even admit, that's as far as we can measure it. So
Yeah.
it could go on for ages. Who knows? But
It
and a
is,
beautiful
isn't it?
history.
And the horse heart field, they've done studies on working with equine therapy and the horse heart field. Have you seen, or I know you love horses as well, so you would have experienced just there's an energy shift that happens the minute you're in the presence of those majestic beasts. I've done a Reiki session out where we basically did it as an experiment, where we took a massage table out into a paddock where there was a small herd. And straight away, they make you part of their herd, which is fantastic. I definitely have that. When, one of the healers that was there, or the equine therapist, said to me, you have to be present when you're around horses. You have to be present. There's just something about their energy that brings you into the presence, and nature does that. And there's so many different ways that we can get connected, and I find it fascinating just looking at the different ways that not only sound, but, we experience sound in nature, don't we, as well? There's, you know, so many different ways in which we can get connected. So, Tenille, do you have any personal rituals that you use within your own life with sound healing that helps you to kind of regulate your stress?
Mm. Um, I it's an interesting thing with rituals. I think we all need them, but I also think that we can fall into habit forming where it becomes something that becomes more like a task as opposed to something we really enjoy doing. So
Mm.
I always like to have a toolbox of rituals. So it'll change every day depending on where I'm at, how I'm feeling. Like this morning, I do meditation in silence, or then sometimes I'll do a meditation with whale music, or sometimes I'll not do a meditation at all, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it today. So I like to create a little bit of framework, but allow flexibility in the framework of ritual. And so for me, what I've found is that when I am doing sound, that is my ritual now, because it's when I'm giving sound, I'm receiving it now. Now that I've been able to, because I've been doing it for so long, I actually find that it fills me up so, so much. But yeah, I make sure that I've got my instruments out with me. Sometimes I'll sleep with them in my room. I'll connect in with them. If I'm going to do for my own management of stress, I think, we all have it. And it's just, and I run multiple businesses. So it is a case of just tuning in, but definitely sort of, the grounding, taking the time out, breath, Some things that I like to do is also monitor how often I'm in one side of my brain, even though the whole brain works together, but it all fires. But, metaphorically, like when I'm really in the creative space versus the logical space, a lot of the
Mhm.
time I'm in the logical, pragmatic space. So I always monitor how much that is and feel that sensory in my body. And then when I feel that I need to break that up a bit, I'll just start playing an instrument. And so, that's why I've got the piano behind me. I've got my instruments around me while I'm working as well. So I always make sure I've got them within hand's reach so then I can just bust out some music if I need to.
I love that. It really taps into your freedom, value there as well, where it's, and I find the same as well. My husband's very structured and he's like, with business, you need to have some structure, but, the true art, when you do measure that creativity and, spontaneity and intuition within that structure, it is almost having, things that are really simple and easy to lean into, when it inspires you to do so. And I think that's a gift. I want to reflect a little bit on what you spoke about as healing as sound as an escapism, because quite often I'm really interested in where is the place or what is the feeling that you embody when, when you just get into that kind of like a runner's high, or I know when I'm channeling, it's like that channeling high. It's that place where I leave all my stress and all the human aspect behind, and I just elevate into this. It's hard to describe, isn't it? It's like that unified field. How would
Mhm.
you describe a typical experience where you just lose yourself?
Oh, it's all frequency for me, just because of the work I
Mm.
do. It's all frequency based. How would I describe it? It's that feeling that you get when you have a love burst for someone, like if you think of
Yep.
someone or a pet or someone that you love dearly that always puts a smile on your face. And you have these moments of just this immense amount of love or gratitude. It's a similar frequency to that frequency that, that you go into when you feel that experience with, for me with sound. And I can sort of see frequencies sometimes and so, I get to play with them in some ways and understand them, but also with a lot of discernment and maturity around that, because it's like, we've got to be careful
Yeah.
what we think we're playing with, because none of us
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
yeah, I feel that it's a really beautiful, almost like a pool of, if you could imagine diving into a pool of frequencies that just merge and harmonize with your body, and it's just this beautiful, like it's almost like you're floating in the middle of an ocean.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful description. And you can kind of see why so many people now are turning to music for therapy and healing. And I had an experience which I wanted to share with you, which I think both of our listeners would find interesting. But I went to my girlfriend's house and we decided we had lunch together. And it was just, we do it quite often where every couple of months we just get together as women to just feed each other and, listen to the problems we're having. And we decided to do a sound and energy healing session. So we had a massage table and my girlfriend has this big gong in the room and she has like a little triangle bell. I don't even know what they're called because I'm not musical at all. Apart from I have got a good musical ear. And so we had three of us, and so one was playing sound, and it was just free for all. She's just like, "Here's how you bang the gong." Like she literally just said, don't hit it in the middle, go around the edges. And then she had like a rainmaker that we used, and there was a few things, a couple of bells. And I was on the healing table first and just received Reiki. And there was something about the fusion between energy healing and sound healing that just instantly took me somewhere else. It was just so divine. And, part of that to be just held and loved by, two women I dearly, admire. And then we swapped around and again, two of us didn't know how to play the sound and just exploring the difference of the frequency. And, Wendy, who was quite experienced, really lifted the vibration and got right into it. And it was loud. And Fiona, when she played, it was a bit softer and gentler. And it almost just took us into a fusion of the imagination and the presence. And it's hard to describe. It's such a unique experience. But to know that it's fun and interesting at the same time, dogs chewing on something behind me, it's fun and interesting. But I know on a physiological level, it literally changes the frequency and the energy of our body and just puts us into a healing state. Can you describe what that is for people that might be curious about,
Yeah.
what it is that just makes us feel so good when we're in those experiences?
Yeah. So usually I say to my audiences, if I put you under a microscope at a subatomic level, your cells are vibration. We come from vibration. We are sound. That you look at how the baby is formed, and the molecular breaking up of that's all done through vibration, and then it becomes 4, and then it
Yeah.
becomes 8, and then it becomes 16, and then it becomes a life. And so we come from that. We are that. And so if I put you under a microscope at a subatomic level, you would be vibrating at a certain rate. Everyone will be doing it differently. Now, when you walk into a space, when
Mm.
you're using sound, what happens is when we listen to sound is usually, some sound, like most of the sound we listen to is somewhere between the 440 hertz, 444, depending on what we're listening to as the tuning center of the music. And that's usually 440 cycles per second of the sound wave before it hits our ear. So when you walk into, say, a sound therapy space, I typically use 432 hertz, but there's no hard and fast rule. It's just what resonates for you. And so 432 is the dominant frequency in the room. And what happens is your cells begin to mimic that dominant frequency. And as it begins to mimic that dominant frequency, it starts to create like this beautiful blood flow that happens in the body. The cells start forming more. You start getting more little rings of light around the cells, and movement begins to happen because it's mimicking that frequency. You just have to look at how water reacts to frequency. I mean, we are that, so it's kind of similar thing that happens. And because this particular frequency is said to be the frequency of the earth, and there's all other theories of what it relates to, it's said that it brings us into a state of homeostasis. And so it's helping us regulate our nervous system. It's helping us, upregulate our immune system, and it's bringing the heart rate, down a bit. It's helping the breath rate as well. So it's, and bringing the heart rate variability to heightening it. So it has like an actual physiological effect on the physical body. I think on the spirit body, we already know it. So it's just like coming home, and that's why it feels so good, because we get to just sit in that which we are. And it's just like this embodiment of that frequency, and I think also creating that space. And when we do drop into, so if we looked at like back in the science side of it, we drop into typically a delta theta brainwave state. Most of the time we're in beta, which is, the beta or high beta, or, it's because we're going and doing. And so when we're in that delta theta, that's sort of where all the magic happens. That's that dreamy state when we just waking up. And it's in that state that we actually find that beautiful, when you come out of a really good deep rest, it's
Yeah.
really, really healing for the body.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we all knew we felt better, and to hear that is really, I guess that's where the science, if we could get the science to confirm that these states are achieved through frequency. And I know that in channeling sessions that I've done, my guide Anya has spoken about the benefit of, like, it is a new technology coming in, and, where it's coming from, I do believe that the human race has been gifted it as sound frequency, and it's almost like it's been hidden all along. Yet if we start to apply it in particular ways, in combination with our intention, powerful change can happen. And I also think there's something around, if we look at an orchestra, I remember sitting in a cafe with you right before you launched that project. Do you remember where you were talking about the excitement, but also how big it was to, almost educate an orchestra how to use a different frequency? Like, it wasn't an easy task. So, no wonder no one else has done it, Tenille. So congratulations for having the courage to really step into a new frontier, but also I know you as a friend, but as a spiritual woman as well that has tapped into otherworldly beings. And I do feel like we've been gifted with sound as a way to elevate and come back together and harmonize like an orchestra does. I've watched my daughter play flute. I've heard her practice flute in the back room, and it's not great, let me be honest. Like, when someone is learning how to play an instrument, it's like,
No.
we close the doors and, off you go. And funny enough, she picked up music because she had an injury in her ankle and she couldn't move and she needed to exert her energy. And she used to do it through gymnastics. So when she could no longer run out her energy and her stress physically, she had to find something, and music gave her that same outlet, which is interesting. But when I went to watch a performance and sitting there in the audience and seeing the harmonizing of all these different instruments coming together, it moves the entire room, and you put in the intention that you're bringing to the work that you're doing, Tenille, as well as world-class musicians working on a totally different frequency. I've had the privilege of being in the presence of that sound, and it's transformative and it's life-changing. And I really do want to congratulate you on the hours and hours and hours of work that you have put in and dedicated for all of our benefit, and even just making your work available for free for anyone to listen to just on Spotify, is such a gift to us all. So I highly recommend you go and listen. And your voice is exquisite. It is just angelic and especially, I met you as a confident, incredible woman that I was just in awe of. So it's quite interesting to hear your beginnings. It does bring that humility to you, because I would have to say you're one of the most confident, humans that I've met, but you also have leveled out with this just approachability and kindness and humility, which is unique in a powerful woman. And I think those elements are what's needed as we move into that feminine energy of female leadership, is heart-based leadership.
Yeah, I think the confident piece is I may appear confident, but every day in the mirror I tell myself I am enough, because self-worth is it's still a journey for me. I've been doing the work since I was 17, but it's still there. It's just
It never ends, does it?
No, and I know that it may appear that I am all those things, but yeah, no, I'm also very, very much have the daily challenges that a lot of women face in business or just in general, and so it's around the I'm enough piece and the self-worth piece. And in many ways a lot of the work that I've done and the accolades I've got, a big part of that I think comes from this subconscious need of wanting to be loved and accepted. And I'm very aware of that, and it's like, but as long as I channel something positive and it helps other people and it's of service to people, then I'll utilize that for good instead of self-deprecation.
Yeah, I can relate. And I think that's probably one of the ways in which we connect. I have a very similar experience. And definitely, I feel as though I was born to create love on the planet, and part of that is that discovering that self-love element. And even though I've been teaching Reiki for 22 years, that was my path that I discovered, that kind of opened the door to being kinder and gentler with myself and kind of figuring out, well, who am I and who do I want to be? And always on that questioning journey. And quite often I would see other people that are living life and kind of think, I love that element in them. One of my mentors she loved kindness and made kindness one of her values. And I'm like, wow, I can choose that. Like, I can, as an adult, we get to choose and upgrade values, and we get inspired by incredible people. And, quite often our life takes us on different journeys and experiences. Just on what you've just mentioned, I think it's really important for people that are, either starting their journey or just beginning, they look at us and they can see all of experiences and accolades, which I think is fantastic. But we can also make a lot of mistakes on the way. And as
Oh my gosh.
entrepreneurs and as
So
business
many.
women, it can be helpful just to talk about the real side of life. What's one of
Yeah.
the biggest challenges you've overcome and the lessons learnt in it, if you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. The amount of nights I've, and times I've been, in tears and just wondering if this is what I'm meant to be doing. And I think part of the biggest challenge that is a theme across my 25 years of building companies is that I've often like come out with things before their time. And as a result of that, I've had people try to commercialize it, try to take it away from me, try and come into my company and get me off the board of my own company. Um, so many different things like that. So, I think uh, I think the biggest challenge is twofold. One part is making sure that I'm really discerning about the people that I bring into my field. And even as discerning as I have been over the years, it still can sometimes slip through the cracks and you think you know someone and then something happens. But I think for me it's understanding, and I was reflecting on it this morning, like these things that have happened in my life, it's like they've just happened for me. I mean, we've heard that saying before, it happens not to me, it happens for me. But when you really sit in that, and I was like really sitting in it this morning, and I'm like, I'm just so grateful. Like, if that did not happen, this really would not have happened. It sounds so cliche, but it's true. But yeah, and I think the biggest challenge that I have had is probably believing in myself is the biggest one. It's not anything external because if the lack of self-worth and the lack of self-belief, it translates in experiences through other people to reconfirm that which I am already as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'm really mindful of that and really working on, even though I do things that are big scale and I've done a lot of incredible things in my life and been able to manifest, because I have the capacity to, and I coach people and all of this type of stuff as well. It's like, how to manifest. Like, I get everything on my dream board, and it's just second nature to me. Things just take time, but what I do notice is that it is the biggest self-awareness journey that could ever exist. But for me, the biggest thing self-worth is massive. Coming from the environment I've grew up in, I had no structure, I had no foundation of trust, integrity. There was no foundation of love, even in my later years, as I've been in a decade with my life partner who's a woman, and to even come out there, I also got pretty much disowned, and all sorts of things happened, and so it's the one thing I know is that life just happens. It doesn't matter what work we do; we're not immune to being human and the humanness of life.
Yeah.
But for me, what's helped me get through it is understanding that it's all cycles. So, when I'm in a good cycle, I milk it. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I've come to the end of a 9-year cycle, and that 9-year cycle was like going through the fires of hell. That's the only way I can describe it. It's been like I've been burnt, I've been tarnished, I've been crushed, I've been, all these things, whilst also creating beautiful things. But it's like
Mm.
I found the pattern of the universal law in what I do, and just being able to play with that pattern and just be in it and know, okay, I'm in this part of the cycle now. Great. But without premeditating that, oh, okay, well, this is good now, this might get bad, like the cycle. But it's just like just being in the moment with that cycle, but having an overall knowing of that cyclical nature of life. That's taken a bit of the pressure off of, like, I suppose, polarizing when things are bad, because, if you get tough things that happen, it's a lot easier for us to be negative than it is to be positive. But
Yep.
yeah, I just think challenges have been the people I surround myself with, because I have such a big heart and I am so generous. I often I often become a target for certain people, and I'm becoming more
People can
discerning
take
as I get
advantage,
older.
can't they? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. And that's
Yeah.
when the people you surround yourself with is so important. I've certainly discovered that in my journey. And the same thing, I remember having a breakdown and it was kind of at the height of, my Reiki career and just realizing, oh, I'm human. It was
Yeah.
like this element of because when you're a spiritual teacher, there's so much pressure that you put on yourself. And it was almost like the more people loved me, the harder I was on myself. It was like the more successful I got. And people talk about that fear of success. And it's a real thing. And I think that's why I ended up going back to a psychologist and I'm crying in her office going, I'm such a fraud, and like I teach people healing and I haven't even got my shit together. And it's just, she said, this will be a teaching experience. I'm like, I'm never telling anyone that I had depression again. And this
Yeah.
was in the middle of COVID, true to form. I did when I was ready, shared it at the time when I was able to and not a minute before, because she also taught me that boundaries are important, especially when you're public like we both are and have a public profile. It's like I heard Brené Brown talk about vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability, it's oversharing. And I just think it's so important to kind of measure between authenticity and putting yourself out there and being real, but also going, not everyone deserves this part of me or needs it. And we've got to protect ourselves a little bit as well.
Yeah, I always choose windows of things that I feel I want to share. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know when I did finally share that with my audience, they just found me relatable. And I think I do have this little part where I just remind myself, oh, I'm just a little human and it's okay. Because we do have the human ego and the human mind and the worries and the emotions. And exactly what you said about, the cycles we go through, not only with the lessons, but, we do. I find when I look back over my journey, the greatest transformations come from the challenges. But, without those challenges, we wouldn't really appreciate when things are just going so well. We pinch ourselves and it's like, oh my God, this is so good.
Mm.
One of my mentors said it just keeps getting better and better. And she would tell me to say that when it's really amazing. And you're just sitting there and you're just in awe of what you've created or how a movement that you've been a part of founding has been taken up. That must be so, yeah, such a privilege to kind of be in that flow of inspiration that we get to bring some of these things forward into and gift to humanity from inspiration, from that partnership with spirit. And it's pretty cool. For those that are considering or would love to learn more about adding sound as a therapy to either for healers that are already, Reiki healers that I teach or other people that psychic mediums. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your training and how they can find more information about it?
Yeah, thank you. So the journey to actually creating this program was not something I planned to do. As always, everything occurs the way that, we have a plan and then there's the plan. So I was providing sound to a beautiful Indigenous elder who's also a friend, Uncle Noel. And he was receiving my sound or all of us, it was the three of us. But when we only got to the end of it, he kind of came up and he looked at me and he said, Tenille, he said, just looked me in the eyes and he goes, I have never experienced anything like that in my life. And he goes, you need to share this medicine. Not just it, but you need to share the medicine. And I'm like, okay. And then I kind of walked away from that and just needed to decompress. It took me, a little while just to absorb the energy that was behind that. And
Yeah.
I sat with it and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I teach what I do? Like I never thought about teaching what I do because it was just so intuitive. It was not something that had a
Organic.
framework.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't have a framework
Yeah.
to it, but I am very framework driven as well. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I just have to put some time and energy into it. So 6 months go by and I've
Yeah.
developed the sound therapy certification program, and it's not a typical one where it's just like this is how you play an instrument, which is important, But this is like the foundations, the fundamentals. It's the things that I wish I got taught. And we also cover instrumentation. And then I bring in all the key people who were, a massive part of my life of me getting to where I am. And so honoring them and also their skills and their talents. So I have like, Julian, who's from Sound Alchemy, but also in Encoda in the orchestra. And then also January is my life partner, but also voice coach and does amazing work in sound as well. And then also Ian Morris from Listening to Smile, who's a frequency alchemist. So I've brought in these people to do like mini master classes as well. So it's kind of it's a really full-bodied experience, but we do only have 2 spots left for this first round of founding students, and it's going to be.
I'm not surprised.
It's going to be a 12-week program. It's a 3-month program, so it's sort of self-paced online, but it's also so it's accessible globally. But it's also got me every week with you going through the journey. So we do like regular check-ins and everything, and just take you through this incredible journey. And as I was putting it together, I was like, oh my God, I wish I could have gotten this information at the beginning of my my tenure of doing this. So so it's a really beautiful offering, an unexpected offering. It's been blessed by Uncle Noel, and it was totally like looking forward to starting. We begin 14th of February, but people can find out about it on my website, which is just tenillebentley.com. So TENILLE Bentley LEY.com.
Beautiful. Well, I think it's going to be the beginning of an incredible journey, Tenille. And I know with your other businesses, there's a real element of love and connection. And, with your other business, teaching children how to regulate their emotions and to be able to communicate effectively. And I just think out of your rough beginnings, you have, turned that pain into you've transformed it into love. And not only have you experienced that expression in your own life, you're now sharing it with others. So you are an absolute gift to the world and a beautiful friend that I adore and always make me smile whenever we connect. So thank you for your time today. You're such a busy woman, so I won't hold you up any longer. Do yourself a favor and go and definitely experience Tenille's live in-person sessions, because I know she holds them regularly, as well as if you're interested in learning more about sound. It is a therapy that will, I think, accelerate anything else that you're doing. I can imagine kinesiologists, other musicians, other healers and light workers all tapping this on as another modality, another tool in the toolbox, like you spoke of before, that not only will revolutionize their life, but also help us to make a positive contribution to the rest of the world and to our family and the people that we love the most importantly. So keep going. You've got the blessings of the Aboriginal elders. What an incredible experience to have him vouch for your work and encourage you to share this. It's amazing. It's amazing. I can't wait to, with bated breath, see what happens next time. Thank you, Tenille.
Thank you so much.